and welcome to the ID Talk podcast. I'm Alex Perala, and I'm here with my colleague Tony Bitzionis. Hello, Tony.
Hey Alex, how's it going?
It's going well. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. So Alex, we've got a little bit of a different show today, don't we?
Yeah, we recorded an interview with two guests, a gentleman from a couple of pretty big name companies, Svyatoslav Senyuta from Visa, and Rahul Parthe, the chairman and co-founder of TECH5. We wanted to talk to them because they have this new GovWallet solution, like government wallet. It's a digital ID that integrates Visa's payment technology. So it's a pretty unique approach to digital ID, and it seems like there's a real opportunity for it to get some traction in a number of countries and regions. So we really wanted to talk to them about it. They both had a lot of expertise to bring to bear, and so it got quite in depth. And so I think this week we're probably just going to skip our usual news roundup that we like to do. You can find all the big industry news on findbiometrics.com, but Tony and I should probably just get right to the conversation with Svyat and Rahul. Again, I thought it was really interesting. Am I
Yeah.
wrong, Tony?
No, it was really interesting. There's just a lot of information packed in there. I mean, Svyat's Ukrainian, and he provides examples from Ukraine's own digital ID system, not related to GovWallet, but just a separate system as like an illustrative example. And then you have Rahul's technical expertise, and so I feel like we've got it all in on this one episode.
Yeah, it was super interesting. So definitely worth listening all the way to the end. So without further ado, let's get to it.
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, so we are now very happy to be joined by two gentlemen who can speak to a really exciting project that is helping to build kind of the emerging digital infrastructure that we see popping up around the world. So we have Svyat from Visa and Rahul from Tech5. Guys, welcome to the show. I'm just going to ask each of you to, if you could just briefly introduce yourselves to our audience and just quickly outline what is your role in this project, and then we'll kind of get into what the project itself is and what GovWallet is. So Svyat, why don't we start with you?
Sure, of course. So my name is Svyat. I'm leading Visa government solutions in Central Europe, Middle East, and Africa. In Visa, I'm based out of Dubai, and I'm responsible for any commercial engagements with governments, government institutions, and organizations. And our core task of my function in Visa is to ensure that we are helping the governments to go through this digital transformation journey and to ensure that we are reaching very high levels of financial and digital inclusion across all the markets. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
Nice to meet you too.
Welcome to the show. And Rahul, a lot of our audience is probably already going to know who you are, but for those newcomers and Visa fans who are tuning in, can you introduce yourself?
Sure. Thanks for having me. I'm Rahul. I'm the co-founder, CTO, and chairman of TECH5. In this context, what I would quickly highlight is that the focus is being on building digital infrastructure. And I want to categorically say that and not ID infrastructure, because we are bringing a lot of things together. And as my friend Svyat mentioned that, what the function of his division is to bring government solutions, and especially from the payments angle. What I'm doing in this context is working on the digital identity infrastructure piece of it. And then we are tying these together with the payment stuff, which enables the governments to not only implement really efficient delivery services in terms of government delivery, but then also enable the enterprises in that country to basically build a digital infrastructure, which is based on self-sovereign identity principles. And we'll delve into more of these. But long story short, I'm focusing on building that vision and then the whole end-to-end offering for the governments.
Okay, great. Thank you for that. And again, welcome. Tony, how should we kick things off?
I can get us started. I think maybe with like just a very, very good introductory general overview question for those in our audience who don't know. Can you guys just give us a explainer of what the GovWallet is? I don't know who wants to take this question. You can each have a crack at it, but just give us an overview of what the GovWallet is.
Okay, perhaps I'll start with that. So as we all know, right, digital identity is the buzzword, right? And most of the times when we go to talk to governments, they say we want digital ID, but if you really dig in deep, they really don't understand what they really want. So this is where we go and educate them that digital ID in its isolation is pretty much meaningless.
Right.
It has to be an infrastructure where the identity helps realize some use cases and helps the citizens to avail those services and in a secure and privacy preserving mode and so on. So the GovWallet is a digital agent of a SSI based wallet. But again, when I go back to the concept of saying that in its isolation, it's just a wallet, but that's not what we are offering, right? What we are offering is the entire infrastructure where we work with the governments to not only help the government have the citizen a wallet in hand or in virtual cloud where they can hold their credentials, which could be identity credentials or payment credentials, and Svyat will comment more on that. But then also help the governments issue standard compliant credentials, from the trusted sources, and we help them build that trusted authorities or trusted service providers. We also help them come up with governance policies and also how do you take that and implement as a framework. Enforcement of those policies and frameworks, which, as you can imagine, is legal, financial, commercial, and technical at the end of the day. Now, as we are building this, and as the use cases evolve, one major use case is about revolves around payment. So what happens is that when you're transacting with the digital ecosystem, you're always exchanging something. Most of the times it's trust, but the biggest value transaction is money. And this is where we rely on, we're working with Visa basically to set up, and Visa has its own ecosystem of government solutions and, how to enable governments to do other programs, which I think, Svyat is the right person to answer. They are part of this, and then we'll come back to how we get together on this.
Yes, that's.
Thank you, Rahul.
Yes, Svyat, go ahead. I was just going to ask you to follow up and explain more about the payment side of that.
Sure. So just to give you first like with a high level picture, right, on how we are kind of looking at it. So in principle, Visa as a business is entirely built on trust, right? And the entire digital ecosystem is built on trust. It's a foundational of what we are doing as a company, right? And it has never been important, especially, when you're kind of dealing with governments and there are like lots of different sensitivities. And when governments look at the core objectives in terms of digitization, they are looking first and foremost on how to ensure digital inclusion and financial inclusion, right? How to provide people with access. And I think that this is kind of the core word, access, right? And lots of people today across the globe, right, they are excluded to a very big extent from being able to access public services, which are like really critical for their lives. They don't have access to financial services, so they're excluded, in fact, from the financial system. So we were looking on how to bring all these elements together. If you will look at many countries across the globe, right, many of those countries do not have even a national foundational ID. This is the problem, especially if you are looking at Africa, right? More than 400 million people do not have foundational IDs. And this is critical because if a person doesn't have a foundational ID, right, it cannot access, obviously, public services, financial services, many other things, which are super important. So in order to address it, we are working with more than 15,000 financial institutions and lots of GovTech fintechs across the world. And, this unavailability of ID or lack of KYC data is creating lots of challenges, because that is a barrier to drive financial inclusion. Therefore, we started our strategic collaboration with TECH5 to find the ways on how to combine two extremely important elements together. And if you look at the formula of financial and digital inclusion, effectively it contains like three core pillars, right? The first one is obviously the ID, right? And as everything is now moving to digital, so digital ID is the best form factor on how to move ahead, right? Africa is mobile first, Africa is digital first, right? Just as an example. And this is where all these processes is moving. And it helps to scale fast as well. The second pillar after ID is digital payments. Obviously, in order to make the ID functional, the easiest way to make it functional are clear kind of payments use cases, which will be driving the usage. And the third pillar, obviously, is all about like automating processes and regulations, right? So if to bring all these three elements together and with the right strategy, it creates immense synergy. We have seen this happening, right, in India with Aadhaar system giving significant boost in a very short term, I would say, to such an immense population in the world, right? And we think that the combination of those elements is like really, really important. So in addition to what Rahul said, I think that ID wallet is like really critical in terms of the payment wallet, right? So today, as lots of people, right, don't have access to financial services, I think it's really critical to help the governments to leverage the ID rollout and combine it with provision of local government wallets, which will immediately open access to financial ecosystem. And the reality is that the government wallets, they reduce the cost, they reduce the risk, they reduce the inefficiency of cash-based legacy payment systems, and all interdependencies from other intermediaries which are working in the market, right? Also, it's critical, like if you will imagine a government wallets, it gives a full transparency and visibility and operational control for the government to manage its government disbursement and how to do it in the most reasonable way, how to avoid fraud, how not to pay pensions to deceased people, how avoid fraud of making, payments for ineligible people, right? And the digital ID component is really critical because the government needs to know to whom the payout is made to. So this is one. And if we are talking about government disbursements, we are talking about different types of social aid, social support, fiscal stimulus, pensions, whatever, right? Like all the government disbursements. Today, the trend is that lots of governments are just paying into bank accounts, people cash out, and the effects of cashless economy is going down, right? Because still cash is prevailing. But bringing in the wallet component and bringing it all into digital domain will help the governments not only understand how efficient their public disbursements are, but also to have control over these as well, right? Because to add some component of programmability, right? So if you want to, for example, make a payout for health support or education support, you can limit on how people can spend those funds, right? So this is one chunk. The other piece is to give people access and ability to make the payouts to the government, right? How to collect taxes in the most efficient way, how to collect fees, fines, penalties, whatever the government is collecting. In this case, bringing more revenues to the government and also helping to reinvest into that digital infrastructure, right? And making the ball rolling all the time. And we believe that this kind of combination of both, and we have seen it already, is creating huge, huge synergy. And yeah, we can talk about some more examples as we will be going, but I think that that Ukraine, for example, is one of the great examples of how they arrange the e-government ecosystem. It's called Diia. USAID recently named it as the gold standard of e-gov, right? It was kind of the start of governments across the globe to build those inclusive digital government ecosystems, or as they call it, a digital government in the smartphone.
Yeah, that's That's really interesting. And as both of you were talking, something finally clicked for me, because when I first saw the news that TECH5 had partnered with Visa, I thought that's interesting, but like why payments and ID together? But now it makes sense. And I also remember back to a couple of years ago, I read a book by this economist, Stephanie Kelton, that was kind of arguing that the whole basis of government in a way is giving people like building a financial relationship with citizens, whether it's like collecting taxes or giving them the means to spend money for healthcare and food and blah, blah, blah. So I'm not an economist, and I probably completely messed up her argument, but it clicked to me that like, yeah, payments are foundational for how we identify ourselves and relate to the government and relate to non-government but sort of related entities like banks, and your employer wants to know who you are and they want a government official to tell them. So yeah, that all totally makes sense. And there's a million directions we could go with this, but one thing I want to clarify before we go further is just what is the role of biometrics in the GovWallet? And in general, like what's the approach to authentication? Because of course, the stakes of this are pretty high. It's serving a really important role. So you have to get authentication and identity correct. So I guess, Rahul, this is probably for you. Like what's the approach being taken here?
Yeah, so good question, and I think this is the basis of the whole discussion. The wallet itself acts as a onboarding endpoint. So citizens are basically advised to download this government wallet, and then they can enroll themselves to get their digital credential, a verifiable credential from a trusted authority. And depending on which government it is and what methods of proving your identity or identity proofing is used, the wallet allows you to capture your face, your fingerprint using the back camera. And then in some countries, there are reference databases that you can hit, and then the credential gets pushed to the wallet. Or in some countries, you might do the whole IDV process where you show a card, you do a selfie, and do a liveness check and so on. So that's the beginning point for a citizen. They download the wallet, and then they create a credential, and download it. So in all of this, we as the platform providers, neither us or Visa ever holds to the credentials, right? We do not have the PII or the information. It's in the central location where the government issues it, and then it's into the wallet of the user. So let's say that's the role of biometrics when you're onboarding or getting the credential onto the wallet, number one, right? Now, the second phase would be is when you wanted to, let's say, do an eKYC to open a bank account or apply for a credit card. So for that, the institution now just has to tap into this wallet, of course, with consent. If the regulatory body requires another biometric check, they can do it, or just bypass that because the credential was downloaded after biometric verification. So the eKYC process for the banks becomes like a single click. And we have the wallet offers like an interactive process where you just go through a few clicks, and by doing that, you can open a bank account, and literally in a few seconds. Then the third role of biometrics comes into play when it is all about security and privacy. So security aspect is where the user is allowed to configure and set it such that based on the risk of the transaction, they can set up the biometric modalities that should be checked before approving that transaction. So if it's a low risk transaction, just look at my face. But if it's a high risk transaction, ask for my face and my fingerprints. By the way, no dedicated sensor, right? I'm talking about a camera, back camera of the phone, so which is pretty much in all smartphones now. And if there is like a real super high risky transaction, it will be face, finger, and PIN number or voice and so on. Now, all of this matching is done on the device, so nothing leaves the device. So imagine we're fully compatible with the passkey ways of authentication. So you can control the authentication on the device for transactions, which, by the way, comes with a very beautiful byproduct, which is now enabling these governments to enable single sign-ons or authentications and replacing the OTPs, which are very much exposed to SIMs card swaps, frauds, and whatnot. So what it allows is now the same wallet could be used for logging into government services or private enterprises with a passkey-like mechanism. So AAL3, if you will, from the NIST special publication, that's what it does. So that's the let's say the fourth piece of biometrics, and the fifth would be privacy, because you could do zero knowledge proof, and then with biometric and cryptographic verification, if there was a need, for example, I think this example is not relevant everywhere in the world, but if I were to go prove that I'm over 21, and when I show my identity, somebody also wants to make sure that it's me and not my son bringing in the phone, right? So they could do a biometric verification on the spot to do the age verification. So if you put it, there is a lot of role for the biometrics, if you will, right from the starting of credential issuance to authentication and authorization of transactions.
Okay. Tony, I feel like I cut you off. You were going to say something earlier.
You saw the look of anger in my eyes, Alex. No, I just wanted to bring up something. We talk about it a lot on this show, and it's that digital ID, digital government infrastructure, they're just such important and impactful parts of this industry. We inevitably end up speaking about them for some amount of time each week, it seems. And whenever I can't speak for Alex, but whenever I am talking to a friend or a family member about what I do, or if they say, explain, your world that you work in, this topic comes up, and almost always the first question that they have is regarding privacy protections and how it'll impact them and their privacy, and kind of the general, well, what does that mean for my privacy? So I guess my question to either of you gentlemen is, how has the GovWallet team approached that issue, the issue of privacy protection?
So
yeah, I would probably just, I'll go ahead. Go ahead, Rahul.
Yeah, from a technical aspect, let me do it, and then the answer is simple. We are pretty much sticking to the SSI principles. So long story short, the credentials are between you and then the issuer, then you and the relying party. What you disclose to the relying party is fully selective disclosure. Again, there are trust frameworks that ensure that you are not sharing it with random people. The communication between you and then the service provider is fully encrypted peer-to-peer. Nobody in the world knows what's going on between you and then the service provider. So we're sticking to all the security and privacy principles, and the whole stack is built on the SSI principles, right? So, if you're fully aware of trust over IP, that's what we follow. So we ground up have made sure that it is compliant with security, privacy preserving. In fact, we enhance it by allowing things like without biometric verification, your information not disclosed, even if you are in an offline mode. And one thing that I did not mention, and I would like to bring up quickly, is that we, as we had mentioned, right, our goal is inclusion, right? And inclusion means that you have to deal with people who have smartphones and who don't have smartphones. So the solution that we are offering actually caters for both, in a way that people with smartphones or people without the smartphones or feature phones can equally participate in that digital transformation using an agent model where they go to some agent, and then everything is done with every biometric check is followed, and there's certain measures in the ecosystem and the app that allows the agent not to exploit the person, right? Now, this is of course not relevant to the Western world, but for the parts in the world that we are working together, it's a very important part. And I think, yeah, we'll talk about the privacy measures in the whole payment ecosystem.
Excellent.
Of course. Thank you, Rahul. Yeah, I think that data privacy is obviously a critical element of the security, right, of the ecosystem, and this is one of the primary objectives and goals for us to ensure that everything is extremely secure and intuitive for the citizens, and effectively complies with the government regulations, and those are different in different countries. And obviously, when we are getting into the process, right, we do sort of due diligence of the local requirements, and obviously all the implementation goes within those requirements as well. For sure, it's critical to know that Visa doesn't store like personal information, right? So it's it's kind of the pinnacle of our business. It's really, really critical. We want to ensure that, when we are building those ecosystems, that governments also have full confidence, right, that they do have and own all the biometric information, for example, right, that they do have full control over all the mechanisms of data and information flow within the systems, etc. We are just providing technology. We are providing vision. We are providing expertise and knowledge, which is quite unique as of today in the market, because those synergies are just, probably starting to pop up. And I believe that we will see more of those different collaborations as well in the future. But I think that security is our core principle to make sure that there is absolute compliance with all the requirements and all the markets we are working in.
Amazing. So from now on, when people ask me that question, I'm going to play the audio clip from this episode, and I'm going to say, just listen to these guys, because I can't say it any better myself.
I do want to circle back to something Rahul said, because I think, Rahul, you answered something I wanted to ask earlier, which was, like, if you are enrolled with your phone, what happens if you lose your phone? You mentioned in your answer to Tony's question that there are agents someone can go to confirm their identity without a phone. So is that the answer? Is it like, I lost my phone, so I go to the bank or whatever the government has designated and say, I don't know where my device is, but I still have my face and my fingerprint, so help me like get access to my stuff? Is that how it would work?
So the answer is yes and no. Let's say if you lose a phone and you buy a new phone, there are mechanisms to recover your wallet and credentials. It's like, you would take a backup on Apple, right? And let's say for whatever reasons you do not trust Apple, then you just buy a new phone and you start from scratch. So you have both options. You would say, let me restore it. Or if I don't trust the service provider, I would start from scratch and get my credentials again. What you're not losing is your identity, right? Your identity is still with somebody who's issuing the credential. You're just re-requesting the credential. And of course, there is the other option where you can actually go to another agent and still do something for you. But primarily, you can imagine that you just restart or recover your wallet. The one thing that I will also definitely say is that, and pertains to the other question that was asked before, is that all these countries are becoming smart, right? And they are smart as in terms of they're actually writing data privacy and protection acts and policies around. So when we go together, we are educating them and that how this implementation and this technology stack will speed up their implementation of these policies and make their ecosystems or digital infrastructure in compliance with what they're writing. And as you can imagine, people look to other countries that have implemented, take some references and build it. But then the technology has to be catching up and make sure that the regulatory policies are perfectly implemented. So our offering together does that. It helps the governments actually comply with what they've written in the law.
Right. Okay, that's a good answer. I also wanted to ask, kind of going back to something Svyat was saying earlier, how there's certain parts of the world where they're basically mobile first, I think it was how Svyat put it, and there's parts of the world where I guess there's an opportunity. I often see the word leapfrog ahead of the West into this new digital paradigm. And so I'm just curious to know, like, this is a pretty new partnership. I think it was only announced in December, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know how much you can say, but like, what kind of engagement are you seeing so far from governments with the GovWallet, if any?
Well, I will start if you don't mind, Rahul. So I think that we have lots of interactions, right? With I will not underestimate. I will say that it's several dozens of those, and we see a great interest from the governments to start, addressing those challenges that they have, right? Starting from the markets where they don't have foundational IDs, and how we can cater to citizens, for example, with bringing in health ID solutions, etc., even in such a challenging environment, right? As well as bringing like payment component to the health ID, which is functional, right? And in other cases, it goes around how to distribute subsidies, right? Because the country was suffering from droughts and a lot of farmers there need support from the government, and how to do it. By the way, we have been reached out by many organizations globally, which are struggling to deliver humanitarian support as well. And as a matter of fact, they are looking for the last mile, how to reach out to those people who really need this help. And obviously, without ID component, is like almost not possible, right? Today, it's effectively is done through cash, through vouchers, etc. As you may imagine, there is like huge cost to this. I see quite a significant fraud as well. So bringing those digital ecosystems in place will help the government to streamline all these processes. And I was talking about Ukrainian example before. I'll just give you a sense. So there was COVID, and people were reluctant to vaccinate, right? There was a government program on how to stimulate vaccination. And the government was willing to pay amount, I think it was 1,000 hryvnias in local currency. So this is roughly, at that time, it was around like $40 for each twice vaccinated person. And they leveraged their e-government platform, which had digital ID. And they have ensured that in a very short term, by the way, as a matter of fact, it happened within 2-3 months. I think program was lasting longer, but within the first up to 3 months, they have opened more than 13 million government wallets and provided people with support, right? And I think that was a great example. I think one of the most efficient programs for the government. And also, there were two objectives. First one was stimulate vaccination, obviously. The second one was to ensure the digital only spent on those wallets, and they could spend only on those sectors of economy which suffered most from COVID, right? To ensure that the government liquidity is incentivizing citizens, but also is channeled back into the economy into specific sectors, what I think was a great idea, by the way, and it worked perfectly well. Extremely seamless experience. People were super happy because it was like super easy to use. Few clicks and you receive the monies instantly, which is like amazing experience. And people were kind of spending it as well, those monies according to the objectives of the program. At the same time, it gives the government huge flexibility. So after a certain period, I think 1 or 2 weeks, people asked for another cluster, like pharmacies, to be opened for this program so that people can spend the funding in pharmacies as well. And that has been done in a matter of 2 or 3 days. So it gives the governments huge, first of all, big data, right? They have huge visibility of what is going on, how the program is being implemented. It helps in the future to build better public policies, right? To build better programs, which will be more efficient. And this is only possible when we are driving this through 2 angles of access, right? Access to identity, because this is the cornerstone of any access to any government program. And the second one is payments, because everything is rotating around payments, right? Because whenever you need to use public services, you need to pay, right? In most cases, whether you need to any other services, most of the services require payments, right? And this is where we are bringing this amazing synergy for creating access to help and to uplift everyone, everywhere, in each corner of the world, and we are happy to do this.
Let me add just a little bit more color. Primarily, what happened is when we started to speak to the governments, right? And governments, as I said in the beginning, is that they know that they need digital identity, right? They say we want digital identity, but then it's not clear what does it really mean. And then they have primary focus, right? Like financial inclusion is isolation, access control and e-government services in another isolation, and digital signatures is another, like some Ministry of Interiors would do ID, Ministry of ICT would do PKI and digital signatures. So when we go together and meet and tell them, right, hey, citizen has to be the center of it, and they have 4 things to do: prove their identity, access something which is physical or digital spaces, financial transactions, and attestations or authorization or digital signatures, right? So what we are doing, is bringing this together, right, in this offering, and interactions are again related to money. When we paint this picture, when we tell them actually how to implement this, we give them the roadmap. It suddenly starts to feel like it's not a white paper that's out there. Yeah, they actually see the app, they see the tangible things, they see what the citizen would be really doing, in terms of receiving services, right? Like as we had mentioned, a COVID disbursement, or based on a zip code, the government sends $50 to your wallet, things like those, or paying fines, right? How do I go? And it's all done in a secure, private manner. So only the relevant identities or institutions or people interacting know what's going on without the whole world knowing. And there is no intermediary, player who knows what you're doing beyond, the two endpoints, right? So long story short, when we speak to the governments in this picture, when we show them the broad picture, we start and then we dive down into like how they can actually realize this. And we're not talking about like years and years of investment, right? We're talking about 3 to 6 months, and they could actually have it live, and they feel really enlightened, right? And they go like, oh, we want this. Yeah. When can I get this, kind of a thing? So it has been a very amazing journey. And I bring this up because, only we started in December together, but the momentum at which, the teams are working together and approaching governments, and then the kind of appreciation we are getting in terms of working as partners with these governments, educating them, and then showing them that sovereignty of the data is guaranteed. We are, they will not have any dependency on any foreign country for their IT infrastructure. We are going to ensure inclusion and enabling their vision of a digital nation is what is very appreciated. And we are pleasantly surprised the amount of contacts and meetings and interactions we already have with so many governments in the region.
Yeah, and just to add probably one thing, I mean, I just want to build on what Rahul was mentioning about the customer centricity. So if you look at more developed countries in terms of digital infrastructure, right, there are quite a few countries which do have today like amazing build outs, right, and a ton of investments done on this. However, like in order to operate in the market as a citizen, you need to download like 10 applications, right? Mm-hmm. Which is not working efficiently, right? So what is the government value proposition should be built around the citizen, right? It's really, really critical. And there shouldn't be like 25 different applications for the citizen to interact with the government, but there should be one ecosystem, one window. So if you need something, you go to the government and you get the help which you require. And in the future, I'm pretty sure it's coming that the government will be proactively reaching out to you. Yeah? So if you're reaching a pension age, for example, right? So when you're retiring, right? You can have your like pension ID, whatever it's called, right? It can be generated automatically in your government wallets, right? You can have it as a document, which can be verified, obviously. And at the same time, you start automatically receiving pension into your government wallets, as easy as it is, right? So you don't need to kind of apply for anything because this right is guaranteed by the government, by the state itself. So we will see those trends coming in as well. But the core, I mean, many of those more developed markets are now saying, yeah, we do have a fragmentation. This is not good. We need to go through the consolidation. So even the most advanced digitally countries now will go through the consolidation of their digital assets and building customer-centric products for citizens.
Yeah, it kind of makes my head spin a little bit, the thought of working with any individual government, but so many different governments with different regional regulations and all this stuff. And I guess the question would be, how do these projects come about? And I mean, it just must be so complicated. What's it like working with governments on innovative project like this that there's no real established playbook for? Well, yeah,
Indeed.
what is that experience like?
Indeed, there is no playbook, and I think that we are one of the first few who are elaborating on this. The core, I think that the core factor here is political will. And I think that if you will look at the top 3 objectives of most of the governments, you will notice that digitalization is there, right? And I think that this is a great commitment, which is driven by the governments themselves. It's being driven by multiple organizations in this space, and I think that we will see a big, I would say, revolution in this domain within the next 5 to 7 years, obviously. So, of course, the level of infrastructure today is very different from country to country. Some countries are super sophisticated, and sometimes it's even more complicated, right? To get into the discussion the right way and to build the architecture in the right way. But what we see in general from the more to less developed countries in terms of digital infrastructure is that it's just the level of effort you need to put in, right? And we are ready to do the heavy lifting. We are not afraid, and obviously you understand that we are addressing all countries, no matter how many people are living there. And I think that it's really about this trust, which I was talking about, that we are building with the governments together when we are showing the big vision, right, and how their objectives can really come true. So it's not a fiction anymore. As Rahul told, right, it will not take like 5 years to implement, right? We are talking that when we start working on the project and scoping this one, till the actual implementation, if there is a political will and commitment from the government, it can be happening really, really fast. And within 6 to 12 months, we can have amazing things happening in the market. And I, as a Ukrainian person, right, I'm a citizen of Ukraine, and as I have experienced a different level of digitization, I would say, I think that it's dramatically changing your everyday life. When you're forgetting completely your paper or plastic ID somewhere, you have only your smartphone with you, you don't have plastic cards, etc. Everything is digital, right? Your phone is always with you. And when you can do literally any legally meaningful action, boarding planes, trains, traveling, making notary services, whatever, and paying for those obviously as well in a full digital manner, you can get access to any government building, whatever. And this creates a completely different lifestyle. So people start to even behaving in a different way, right? And the level of change is dramatic. And what we see that the adoption of such solutions is really amazing. And what I was kind of considered before, so I was thinking, okay, if the adaptability will depend on age, for example, believe it or not, it's not really depending. So again, getting back to the Ukraine's case, more than 25% of users of the digital government are people 55 plus years old, right? So I think that this intuitive digitization, as we can call it, when people don't need to think, right? There is no complexity in the UI UX there. When it's really intuitive and simple, everybody will adopt it and everybody will love it. Everybody will use it on a daily, weekly, etc. manner because it's nice and it's super convenient.
Yeah. One statement I would just add is that the stack that we're building and what we build for the government is an open architecture, right? So you don't have to solve all the problems day one. What it starts is like let the citizens start getting their digital ID, and then you pick like the most critical or the low-hanging use cases, and it's because it's open architecture, you can easily plug in use cases and workflows and things like that, and relying parties, which gives the comfort to the government that I don't have to wait till a fully baked plan and then go live, right? Which always is a disaster, yeah? So you always incrementally improve the system, and as you had mentioned, adoption of the system will depend on how many use cases you bring to the table, and then the user says, with this one thing, I can do 10 different things or 1,000,000 different things. They're going to stick to it, right? And they're going to be happy with the happiness index of the citizen is going to be super high for their government because of trust and ease, if you will.
Makes sense.
This is a good pitch from both of you. So I guess what I'm hearing is that you got a strong case to make. So it's complicated, I'm sure, in every case, working with a different government, but you've got a strong case and everybody's interested in a happy outcome. Thank you for addressing that, guys. I think it's really important, and thank you in general for taking the time to come and talk with us about this. It's a really interesting project that you're doing, and we're really interested to see where it goes. And I'm sure there's going to be some big news in the pipeline. So hopefully we can catch up again and get an update.
Yeah, we'd love to have you guys back sometime.
It was a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you, guys.
All right, thank you. Bye-bye.